What's up, everyone? It's Shrove Tuesday in the UK today, aka Pancake Day. And the word shrove comes from the old word shriving, which means to listen and forgive someone's sins. So I hope you guys are going to forgive me the sin of creating some absolutely awesome waffle charts. By far the most interesting of the pastry-based charts. So let's dive into the tutorial. Now, before we get going with this tutorial, let's just take a look at what we're aiming for. So these are waffle charts. If you've never seen them before, they're these kind of grid-looking charts that we can use to represent comparisons between data. Now, the data that we're going to be using is related to concert ticket sales. And there are 4 categories of ticket: adult, child, platinum, and VIP. And our data set basically just shows how many of each ticket we've sold. And you're going to see the data set in a moment, so don't worry about that. But this is what we're aiming for. Notice that I have a data validation drop-down list just here, and I can select a month from the list, and all of my waffle charts are going to update. So the first one shows all sales for all ticket types, and then I've just broken it down by ticket type for the other 4 waffle charts. Also notice that as I'm changing my data validation, the values are updating underneath those ticket type titles. So everything is really nice and interactive. Now, the way that we do this is by using a combination of design elements, formulas, data validation, and conditional formatting. So let's jump over to the spreadsheet and I'll show you how to set this up from scratch. So we're back in our spreadsheet, and all I've got here is a calculations tab, and then we have a waffle tab at the bottom. And currently this waffle tab doesn't have anything on it. Now, the calculations tab just contains my data source. You can see we have some dates, we have the month, we have the year, we have the ticket type. So that's one of those 4 types: adult, child, platinum, or VIP, and then the quantity of tickets that were sold on any given day. So this is going to be the basis of our waffle chart. Now, in order to kick this process off, because there are quite a few different elements, we're going to start with designing our dashboard, if you like. So let's go across to the waffle tab. Now, I've decided to do a dark themed design this time. I don't normally do that, but I've seen a lot of these recently and they can look really cool. Not that I'm a designer, but we're going to give it a go. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is just change the background color of all of my cells. So if we click in this cell in the top left-hand corner, that's going to select everything. I'm going to go to the Home tab, go to the Fill drop-down, and I'm going to choose this color just here. It's the second from darkest black. Now, with all of my cells still selected, I'm going to make sure that my font color is set to white so that I can see things as I'm typing them. And then in cell A1, I'm just going to do a little design thing just here. I'm going to make column A a little bit narrower, and then we're just going to type in waffle charts. And let's make that, let's say 14 points. I'm going to make it bold. In fact, let's make it a bit bigger. And this little rectangle just here, I'm going to give that a color, but I'm just going to give it a green color at the moment. We are going to come back and change that so it matches our theme. And then the final thing I'm going to do is just add a line underneath waffle charts just to separate it off from everything else on the dashboard. So I'm going to select row 1. Let's go to the drop down. I'm going to go to more borders, and I'm going to choose this border style, just a thin line. I want it to be white, and we're going to put it across the bottom. Let's click on OK, click away, and you can see what that looks like. The next thing I'm going to do is just add a text box with a little bit of text in it. Now, I'm going to copy and paste this in from my finished version just to save a bit of time. But if you're not sure how to add a text box, just go up to Insert, and then you have Text Box over here. And text boxes are cool because they just kind of float above the grid, which means you're not limited to just having text within cells. So Control V, I'm going to paste this in, and let's just move it down to here. Now, just underneath where we have our floating text box, this is where I'm going to have my data validation dropdown that contains all the months. So I'm just going to set this up. So let's type in select month, and we're going to do a little dash dash arrow. Let's widen that out. And then in the cell next to it, this is where our drop-down list is going to go. So I'm going to make that a little bit wider. And at the moment, I'm just going to put a white outline around the outside. So let's go back to more borders. I'm going to choose the thin line again. We're going to make sure that it's white, and we're going to say outline. Click on OK. So now we're kind of set up for when we want to add our data validation dropdown. Now, the next thing I'm going to add in here, just to help me out a little bit, and again, I'm going to copy this across from my finished version because this is all really straightforward stuff. I'm going to copy in my color palette that I'm going to use. Now, you might be wondering, well, why on earth are you doing that? Well, I'm using a very specific color palette for my waffle charts. And I haven't had time to set this up as a theme or anything like that. So to make my life a little bit easier, I've just got the colors that I'm going to be using and their hex codes in these cells. It just means I can quickly copy and paste them. You can always delete this at the end if you no longer need it. So now it's time to create our first waffle chart. And this is essentially just a grid of 10 rows and 10 columns. Now, what we want here is we want to make sure that we have the numbers 1 to 100 inside this grid, with 1 being in the bottom left-hand corner and 100 being in the top right. Now, to do this, I'm going to use sequence and sort. So let's type in equals. Let's do sequence first of all, and then we'll add our sort. So the rows that we want 10 rows. We want 10 columns. We want to start at 1 and we want to go up by 1 each time. Close the bracket, hit enter, and this is what I get. Now currently this isn't organized as I need it to be organized. You can see it's going from 1 in the top left-hand corner down to 100 in the bottom right, and I kind of want it the other way around. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit our formula and we're going to add sort onto the front. Our array is being generated by that sequence formula, and we want to jump to the end and simply go to the sort order, and we want to say we're going to sort in descending order. And now that is exactly how I want it to look. Now I want to turn these numbers into percentages. So again, I'm going to go back to my formula, and at the end here, we're just going to divide everything by 100, hit enter, and then we can Control A and select percentage format. So I have my numbers in my cells. I now just need to do a little bit of reformatting to give this that nice waffly look. So I'm going to select all of the columns and we're going to resize these. Now notice when you drag this column in, can you see just above, you get that little screen tip that's telling you the width. Now the width for these I think it's about 27 pixels or 2.00. If I let go, that's pretty much how I want it to look. Now, obviously we have hash symbols in there because there isn't enough room for the number to display. Now, if that's bothering you greatly, of course you can always reduce the size of the font until you can see those numbers, but you have to take them down pretty small in order to be able to see them. Let's go for 6 in here. There we go. We can pretty much see all of them. So now we have these, I'm going to add some formatting to make this grid stand out. So I'm going to go to fill this with a color that's almost the same as the background color, so just one lighter. And then I'm going to add some borders. So let's go to more borders again. And I'm going to choose a slightly thicker line, and let's make the line the same color as the background, which was this one just here. And we're going to say outline and inside borders. Let's click on OK. Now the final thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to hide these percentages. Now there are numerous different ways you can do this. You could change the font color to the same color as that background fill. I prefer to use custom formatting. So I'm going to select everything, Control 1 to pull up the Format Cells dialog box. And then we can go to the Number tab, Custom, and we can do our little semicolon trick. So if we type in 3 semicolons and click on OK, that's going to hide all of those numbers. They are, however, still there in the background. You can see if I click anywhere in this little grid, the formula is still there, the number is still there. So now that I have this first one, I want to duplicate it. Because if you recall from our finished result, we have 4 more waffle charts to build. So let's select this waffle chart and we're going to say Control C. I'm going to click just here, Control V. Now notice it's going to be a lot wider. So one little trick here is to click the Paste Options tag and say that you want to keep source column widths. And that will make sure that your grid gets pasted with exactly the same column widths as the original grid. Let's click here, Control V. Again, we're going to do the same. I'm just going to do this a couple more times. So now we have the basic structure of our waffle charts. It's time now to do the hard work, which is all of the calculations that we need in order to get these waffle charts representing our data accurately. So let's dive back to our source data. Now, ordinarily, if you have this type of situation where you have your source data and then you want to perform some calculations on that data, I would always advise people to put those calculations on a separate worksheet to where you have your source data. It's always good to keep things organized and separated. However, in this tutorial, just for ease of use, I'm going to be putting my calculations on the same worksheet. And we're not having to jump around different worksheets all the time. Now, the first thing I need to work out here is, what do I want to display in my waffle charts? Well, in this first waffle chart, I want to show all of the different ticket types based on the month that I've selected from this data validation drop-down list that we're going to create in a moment. So let's just focus on this first chart first of all, because once we've done this one, the other four are super simple. So up here, I'm just going to type in calculations. And then underneath, we're going to type in month. And I want to just list out all of the months that we have in our source data, because you can see here that January repeats quite a few times, February, so on and so forth. Now, you could just type in the months or use the fill handle to drag down and fill out those months, or you could use unique. So let's use unique. Why not? I'm going to select my array, which is going to be the month array, Control Shift down arrow, close the bracket, hit enter, and now we have our months listed out in the cells. The next thing I want to do is list out all of the different ticket types. Now we have 4 ticket types: adult, child, VIP, and platinum. Now, once again, I could use the unique formula in order to extract these from the ticket type column. So let's go for unique. The array this time, Control Shift down arrow, is the ticket type. Let's close that off and hit enter. Now, notice that it's listing them vertically. I actually want these to go horizontally. So this is a good opportunity to see how we can combine different formulas together to get the result that we're looking for. Now, what is the function that we use to switch the way our data is laid out? Well, if you said transpose, then you would be correct. So let's jump up to the formula bar. Let's type in transpose. Our array is being generated by unique, and we can close this off, hit enter, and now we get those running horizontally. But wait, there's one more thing that I want to do here. I want these to be sorted alphabetically. So I'm going to go back up to my formula and we're going to add in a sort. Again, the array is being generated by everything we have here. And at the end, I want to say the sort order is going to be ascending, and I want to sort by column. Let's close the bracket, hit enter, and now I have these organized as I want them to be. Now I'm just going to make these headings bold to differentiate them from the rest of our data. Because what we need to do now is perform a sum ifs calculation. Because I basically want to extract out of the table the total of the quantity column when the month equals January and the ticket type equals adult. And I want to do the same for all of the months and all of the ticket types. So for this, we can use sum ifs, but we need to do mixed referencing in here as well if we want to copy that formula down and copy that formula across. So what is our sum range? Well, we're summing the quantity of tickets. Control Shift down arrow, and we want to F4 to lock these in place. Comma. What is our first criteria range? Well, our first piece of criteria is the month. So our criteria range is going to be where we find the month. So let's go back over to our table, Control Shift down arrow to select the month column, F4 to lock, comma. Now we can specify the piece of criteria that we're looking for in that month range. And that is the month of January in this first case. Now, notice that this is a relative reference. If I left this as a relative reference and then tried to copy this formula down and copy it across, it's not going to work because of the way the cell is moving. Now, I really don't want to linger too long on mixed referencing because this tutorial is not about that. But for this, we need to press F4, 3 times to lock that column but not the row, comma. What is our criteria range to? Well, our second piece of criteria is the ticket type, whether it's adult, child, platinum or VIP. So where are we going to find that information? We're going to find it in the ticket type column. Control Shift down arrow, F4 to lock. And our criteria is this cell just here. Again, we need to employ mixed referencing, except this time we're locking the row and not the column. Close the bracket, hit enter, and then we should find that we're able to pull this formula down and pull it across, and we get the correct values. So let's add some comma formatting, and I'm going to take those decimal places down because this is the quantity of tickets, not the price or the amount. So now that we can see the total quantity of tickets sold by ticket type and by month, it's time to go back to our dashboard and create our data validation drop-down list. So let's jump across to the Waffle tab. I'm going to go to cell C7, and then if we go up to data validation, we're going to create ourselves a list, and the source for our list, well, we can grab that from the Calculations tab because we already have the months of the year listed out. So we can just select all of those, click on OK, and now we have a nice little drop down where we can select our months. Now currently this drop down isn't tied to anything, it doesn't do anything, but that's going to change with the magic of Excel formulas. Now, if we jump back to our Calculations worksheet, there's something else that we need to do here. Because we have all of our quantities listed out, but I want to actually show these as a percentage. Now, the reason why is because if we take a look at our Waffle chart, we have grids that are 10 by 10. So we effectively have 100 squares. So in order to get this to represent accurately, the values or the figures that we're linking through to need to really be a percentage of 100. So if I was just to link through to these calculations, it's going to try, for example, with the adult ticket for January, it would try and fill 5,219 squares, which is definitely not what we want it to do. So I'm going to create another little table that shows these values as a percentage of the total. So we're going to create a table that is very similar. Now, the first thing I'm going to do here is, because I have formulas underneath here, I'm going to remove those formulas by using paste values. Because if I try and copy this, so if we just go Control C and then Control V, you can see we get lots of weird things in there. And that's due to those formulas sitting underneath the cell. Now, we don't really need these formulas. They've served their purpose. So I'm going to select everything in this table. We're going to Control C, and then I'm going to use the new keyboard shortcut to paste values only, Control Shift V. Escape to come out. So now that we've done that, we can Control C and we can Control V to paste these in. And I'm going to do the same with the months of the year. Control C, Control V to paste these in. So now we need to perform a calculation which will allow us to work out what each of these values is as a percentage of the total. So in this cell just here, we want to type in equals, and we're doing adults for January. So we're going to select cell I10, and we're going to divide it by the sum of all of the tickets for January. And this time we want to press F4 3 times to make sure that we're only locking the column and not the row. Let's close the bracket, hit enter, and what we should find is that when we copy this down, we get the result that we're looking for. Now, if when you did this, you got numbers instead of percentages, then just select the cells and change to percentage format. My cells were already formatted before. Now, if you've done this correctly, every single row in this table should add up to 100%. So let's give it a go. Alt equals, hit enter, and then copy this down. Everything's 100%, so I know those calculations are correct. So we're getting ever closer to what we're looking for. Now, the next thing to do is link our data validation dropdown to a cell on this worksheet. It's just going to make your life a lot easier. So I'm going to just say cell link up here, and let's just copy the formatting of the calculation cell just to make everything nice and tidy. So I want this cell to be the cell that links through to our data validation dropdown. So we're going to say equals. Let's jump across to the Waffle worksheet and select the cell that contains the month. Hit enter and you can see that that is now feeding through to this worksheet. And what you'll find is that when you change this to something else, it's also going to change on the Calculations worksheet. Now what I effectively want to do here is get Excel to look at the month that I currently have in cell 03 and only show me that month from this table below. So we can use the filter function to do this. So let's click in a cell underneath. I'm going to type in equals filter. Our array, what are we filtering? Well, I want to return the entire row. I don't need to include those month headers because I'm not really interested in those, but I'm going to filter the rest of this data. F4 to lock, comma. What do I want to include? Well, I want to include when the month, F4 to lock, is equal to what we have in cell 03. And again, F4 to lock. Close the bracket, hit enter, and this is what we get. Now again, this is just related to the formatting we have applied to the cell, so let's just change that to percentage format. So what we should find here is that it's picking out of the table below these values. And if we go to the Waffle worksheet and change this to a different month, when we jump back to calculations, everything over here has also updated. So our cell link cell has updated, and also the values the filter formula is picking out of this table have also updated. So now that we have this, we can use these values to create the colors in our Waffle chart. Now notice here currently we've got September selected. This effectively is the value for adults, this is for child, this is for platinum, and this is for VIP. And each percentage effectively represents one little block in our Waffle chart. So this would be 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, so on and so forth, all the way up to 100%. So the quantity of adult tickets for December, I would expect to see 31 of those squares filled. 35 for child, 23 for platinum, and 11 for VIP. Now, if I was to set my conditional formatting up in this first Waffle chart to use these calculations just here, they're going to overlap. So this first calculation here where we have 31% would fill 31 squares in the Waffle chart. The next one, 35%, would overwrite those first 31 and you'd only see a different color for the final 4. Now this isn't exactly what we want. We kind of want them stacked on top of each other. So in order to get that effect, we need to do one more calculation underneath. And all we're going to do here is we're going to say equals this cell plus what we have immediately to the left. Now for this first one, it's going to be the same 31% because we have nothing to the left. But if we copy this across, it's basically like doing a horizontal running total. So this means when we apply our conditional formatting, we're going to get that stacking on top of each other effect instead of overlapping and overwriting what's currently there. But now we're pretty much set up and ready to start applying our conditional formatting to our Waffle chart. So let's jump back. So I'm going to select everything in this first Waffle chart. We're going to go to conditional formatting and we're going to use a new rule. Now we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. And the formula we're going to use is we're going to say equals. We need to select the first square in this grid. Notice by default, we're getting absolute referencing. Now we want to change that to relative. So we're going to press F4 3 times until we get our relative cell references. And we're going to say if this is less than or equal to, let's jump back to our calculations page, what we have in this cell just here, 31%. Let's click on Format, and I'm going to just apply some random colors first of all. We'll change them at the end. So let's select blue, click on OK, and OK again. Check out what happens to our Waffle chart. We basically have 31 squares filled to represent 31%. Now we need to apply 3 more rules for the other 3 ticket types. So with the chart still selected, back to new rule, use a formula. We're going to say equals. Again, we're going to select that very first cell. We're going to make it relative, 1, 2, 3. And this time we're going to say if it's less than or equal to, on our calculations worksheet, the next value along, 66%. Let's change the format. I'm going to do it in green, click on OK, and OK again. Now check out what happened. It's overlapped what we have underneath. This is what I was saying. We're going to fix this in a moment, so don't worry too much at the moment. Let's add our final two rules. So we're going to say new rule again. We're following the same pattern. So we're going to select the first cell, 1, 2, 3 to make it relative. If this is less than or equal to, and next running total. Let's apply a format. I'm going to go for an orange here, click on OK, click on OK. And let's do the last one, new rule, use a formula, equals, select the first cell, 1, 2, 3 to make it relative. And we're going to say if this is less than or equal to the final one, which is 100%. Click on format, let's make this purple, click on OK, click on OK again. So I have all my conditional formatting rules set up, but they're not working quite correctly at the moment because of the way that I have them organized. So if I go back into manage my rules, these are all of my rules. So currently the pink one is at the top, that's the one that's over the top of everything else. And because these increase as we go up, what I could have done is done them the other way around, so maybe did the 100% one first and then done the others. But because I've done them this way, I can simply reorganize my conditional formatting. So I'm going to select the top one. I'm going to use the arrows. We're going to move it down to the bottom. Let's select the next one, move that down, select the next one, move that down. So now when we click on OK, that's what I'm looking for. This is exactly what I want. Now, this is where I would change my colors. And this is why I like to have my color palette listed out. Because what I can do here is I'm going to select this first one, Control C to copy that hex code. And then I'm going to go back into Manage Rules. And I want the blue squares to actually be in this red color. So let's edit the rule, Format, More Colors, and then we can just Control V to paste that hex code in. Click on OK. And you can see that updates. And I would go through and I would do exactly the same for the rest of them. So let's just do one more together and then I'm going to do the rest off camera just to save a bit of time. Control C. Let's go back to manage our rules. The green ones, edit rule, format, more colors, and Control V to paste. OK and OK again. So I've updated the last two. Let's click on OK, and now I have my preferred color scheme. And the cool thing about this is that if I were to change the month in the drop down, everything updates. So you can see those colors are changing according to the month that I've selected. And that is the basic premise of a waffle chart. So now we have that first waffle chart done, it is really simple for us to do the others, because each of the rest of these waffle charts represent just the individual ticket types. So adult, child, platinum, and VIP. And we do this in a very similar way. So this first one is going to be for adults. So I'm going to double click and I'm just going to grab this hex code, Control C and escape. We're going to select the second waffle chart, go to conditional formatting and new rule, and we're basically going to do a very similar thing. We're going to use a formula. The cells that we want to format, well, we're going to type in equals, select that first cell, press F4 3 times to make it relative, and we're going to say if this is less than or equal to. And this time we're going to jump across to our calculations tab and we're going to use this top row of numbers. So for our adults, that's 19%. Let's go to format, more colors, custom, and then I can simply Control V to paste in that hex code. Click on OK, OK, and OK again. And now we're seeing just the quantity of adult tickets that have been sold in March. And of course, this will also update when we change the month in the drop down. And we just repeat that process for the rest of these charts. So I'm going to do that off camera and I'll join you back here in a couple of moments. So there we go, I have all of my charts done. Now the final thing I'm going to do here is just add some labels in underneath each of these charts. And for this, I'm just going to use text boxes. So for this one here, this is all ticket types. And what I find with text boxes is if you need to do a few, a quicker way of doing this is just simply to duplicate the text box. So with it selected, if we press Control D, we get another one, then we can move it into position. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time lining these up perfectly. You can do that if you want to. I'm just going to change this to adult. I'm going to duplicate the text box again, move it across, and complete the rest. And the final thing you could do here, just to really finish it off and make it look nice, is add the percentages underneath each of these waffle charts. And this is a very simple process. Again, I'm just going to select the adult text box. Let's Control D to copy it. I'm going to place it underneath and I'm just going to change the font formatting. So let's make it slightly smaller and we're going to change it to, let's just go for Aptos underneath. Now, instead of the word adult in there, I want the percentage. So I'm going to highlight the text, go up to the formula bar, type in equals, and then we're going to jump across to our calculations worksheet and we're going to pick up the adult value, which is this one just here. Press enter and you can see it pulls it across. Now the font is black, so it's a little bit difficult to see. So let's go in and let's make that the same color as the waffle chart. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and let's make it bold, like so. So I'm going to do exactly the same for the rest of these. And there we go. We have our fully interactive waffle chart where we can change what we're seeing by using the data validation drop-down list. I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Quite a few steps there. This is a pretty long video. And if you just want a basic waffle chart that doesn't have any interaction, then obviously this process is going to be a lot shorter. But I thought I'd just show you everything and you can pick out of it the bits that you want to use. That's it for now, guys. Like, subscribe, share, all of that good stuff, and I will see you next time.